moving on to our next speaker. I'm very excited that I have the honor of moderating this conversation with Reverend Anne-Marie Zanzal. She is a graduate of Yale Divinity School and an ordained minister in the Progressive United Church of Christ. She is a clinically trained chaplain, completing both an internship and residency with the Yale healthcare system and worked in hospitals and hospices. She is a bereavement counselor certified by the Miss Foundation. Anne-Marie came out as a lesbian at the age of 50 after a 25-year marriage and 4 children. After this challenging coming out later in life experience, she founded Coming Out and Beyond, an LGBTQIA plus coaching foundation company service. I don't know. She'll tell me more about what language I should be using. Anne-Marie works with cisgender and transgender women, plus non-binary people comfortable in those spaces who are in the process of coming out later in life. Anne-Marie and her team provide one-on-one and group coaching programs, as well as workplace workshops and retreats. She currently lives in Nashville, Tennessee, with her wife, who is a photographer, Tonda McKay. And please help me welcome Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Hunter.
Yeah, did I pronounce your wife's name correctly?
Yes, you did. Very good.
What kind of photographer?
Usually people think we're saying Tanya, and no, it's Tonda.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of photography work does she do?
She does architectural.
She's
a photographer for years and years and years in Nashville.
Oh, amazing. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Well, welcome. Yeah, so I'd love to hear, we bit a bit about your bio there on the top, but if maybe, you could start off, if there's anything I missed there that you want to touch on before we jump into some of our questions about your past or how you arrived to this point.
Well, I can share a little bit of my story with you because I think there is, first of all, in the straight community and in the queer community, like I think people think that everybody has it all figured out by the time they're 18 or 19, and that's not the case.
I saw that on TikTok. That's the truth. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's not, and the thing is that sometimes it takes people a while, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And so I'm a huge power, like I believe, like in your mission, I'm a huge believer in the power of storytelling and story sharing, because I believe if we hear another story, we often are able to hear our own. So for those of you who have been out forever and like say, how can you do that? Like, how can you come out later in life? I would like you to imagine being at a party and having the wrong name tag on, and everyone is assuming you're someone else. Huh. And so that was a lot of like my life was previously to coming out, and I take full ownership in keeping the name tag on until I had to take it off. And so, it's funny because my faith, my work life, and my coming out are all very, very intertwined. And I can continue with the story a little bit if you would like, or you can ask some questions.
Let's continue on. Yeah, we can jump in.
So I was raised very conservatively Catholic. What I find with the people that come out later in life, I did a little survey in one of my Facebook groups, and 85% of them come from some sort of conservative faith tradition, whether it's Christian or Jewish or Islam. They come from a conservative faith tradition. So when you're raised conservatively Catholic, a lot of times the work I do with the women that I serve, or any of the any of the conservative religious denominations, first thing is you have shame about being a woman. And then you don't sex is verboten, sex is just problematic. And a lot of the women that I work with also too were raised in purity culture. And so that just adds so many layers there. And for me, it was the 1980s. It was a very different time. The AIDS epidemic was going on, and I noticed my attraction to women, but I couldn't find a community, and I didn't even know where to start. And so the majority of my friends were straight, and they weren't much help, because when I tried to say, hey, let's go to a gay bar, they wouldn't go. So I didn't have a wing woman, and I wish I did, because I think I would have definitely have explored a lot more. So I threw in the towel and I decided to get married because all my friends were. And like a lot of women, when I was raising my children, I had four of them. I had 3 and 5 years. I was all in my 30s and I really wasn't thinking about anything but that. So my sexuality didn't come up again for me until my early 40s. And a lot of people who come out later in life, it is often between the ages. So later in life is very subjective. So I work with people as young as 25 to people who are 75 plus. And so what happens is that when we hit mid 40s, a lot of times, they used to call it a midlife crisis, but a lot of times it's a midlife awakening because we decide that, oh, wait a minute, I've been told to do this, this, and this, but is that for me? And so that happened to me when I was about 42, when I read an article in Oprah Winfrey magazine, which talked about the fluidity of women's sexuality. And it was a story about a lot of women who had started down the straight path and then decided that it wasn't for them, and they ended up with women. And so for me, it was such an aha moment, and I all of a sudden had
Use
words.
her language too. The
And
moment.
yeah, aha moment. Oh God, yeah, I did. Oh God, I'm such a believer. And the thing is that I had this moment where I realized that though I had started down the straight path, I didn't have to stay on it forever.
Mhm.
So my then 16-year-old daughter was there, and I was saying, and I said, "Hey, hon, if something ever happens to Dad and I, don't be surprised if I end up with a woman." And so she actually, now I realize, was the first person I actually ever came out to in a very roundabout way. So, it then over the next 10 years, with a lot of struggling and with a lot of trying to find help professionally and talk to people about it, and it was a slowly coming out process because I had to undo a lot of things. I was married. I had 4 kids. I was a minister in a church. I was, I was really acculturated to where I was, and I had to unpack that all. And so in 2016, I started that process. And what I did differently this time, which I recommend to everybody, is I found community. I Googled later in life lesbian, and there was a small little blog. And at the bottom of the blog, and this person is actually a dear friend now, at the bottom of the blog, she said, "Hey, if you're looking for a safe, secret support group online, please reach out to me." And I did. And when I did, there was 187 women in it. And when she disbanded the group because she was tired, there was 2,400 women in it. So that was, yeah, yeah. So we are a huge community. It's very big on TikTok right now, a lot of later in life lesbians on TikTok, and they're very funny and they talk a lot about it. But that's what happened. I found community, and then I fell in love, and the rest is history.
Beautiful, wonderful, and I identify with so much with what you're saying. My experience is different, but the feelings are similar, right? Like I identify with your feelings and experience, and I think that's a really powerful thing. What you said too about community really resonates with me as well, because like though I started to wake up to my own sexuality as a teenager, it wasn't until my 30s that like I had boyfriends and stuff, and I came out as a teenager, but it wasn't really till my 30s that I started to realize that there was more to and being in a long-term relationship with someone of this similar, same sex and gender and stuff like that. It still is an evolution, and it wasn't really, and still is now, like pronouns have changed for me and things like that. It keep changing. And it's because of community that I help develop in myself, and watching other people around me flourish, in their expression, in their identities. And it's because we get to feel safe, I think, and also learn that it's like, oh, these things in my head, I'm not weird, I'm not crazy. This is part of a human experience, and there's other humans that are experiencing this.
Absolutely. And when I joined that Facebook group, all of a sudden there were women saying things that I had only thought in my head. And of
Mhm.
course, like a lot of people coming out later in life, I thought I was the only one,
Right.
and everybody else had it figured out beforehand. And also too, like I met my wife in that group, and that's a long story, but she's been out since she was 18.
Oh,
And so, but the thing is that, I always joke that she gave me the crash course in being a lesbian. And no, I'm not talking about sex, but I'm talking about that she like had worked so much on her own internalized homophobia, and she was so comfortable being a
yeah,
lesbian.
yeah.
And so she challenged, like when I would say something, like I remember I went to see a patient. I was working with hospice still then, and it was a very conservative Christian woman. And I was like, God, I wonder what she would think if she knew I was a lesbian. And I came home and we were dating at the time, and I came home and told Tanda that story. And because I had this moment like, holy, I'm going to be a lesbian minister the rest of my life. And I like had this like feeling of fear come over me. And I
Mm,
came home and told Tunda that. And she said, Anne Marie, you get to be a lesbian minister for the rest of your life. Like, how cool was that? And all
yeah.
of a sudden, my perspective went boop, boop, and it has been incredibly cool, actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
It
so
makes
that was a big help for me. I was really lucky. I met
it's
somebody really early on.
I mean, yeah, that is incredibly lucky, fortunate, and magical, you know.
Yeah, it was.
I love that you talked about your relationship to religion and spirituality. And there's a phrase that you made me think of is a miracle is a change in perception. A friend of mine says to me on a
Oh,
regular
I love
basis.
that. That's
Isn't that
beautiful.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put that on a meme somewhere.
There you go.
And I'll put Hunter Canning underneath it.
I stole it from somebody else, you know, and they shared it, you know, they shared it with me and now we share it. That's right. And that there's our community right there to tie it back to our community. So, you know, I have so many questions. This is so exciting to be talking to you. There's so many things we can go with, you know, when you're talking about your relationship to the spirituality, there's, you know, the family history, there's community. And also I'm so curious about, you have, you know, this wealth of experience, you know, right? Because you have this wealth of experience in your story of like your choices and your coming out when you did, but you also have this experience as being someone that has been there for people your entire career, it sounds like, you know, with hospice and hospital care, being, you know, part of a church, you know, and now with the company that you founded, or please give me the right word. I keep calling it a company. I don't know what to call it, but your
Company.
foundation or
I'm an
okay, good.
LLC. I'm an LLC.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Do you like, can you talk about this, like your wealth of experience and how you've now like share that with other people through your company?
Sure. It was really interesting. It was with joining that community, I realized that so many people were really, really struggling.
Mm,
I saw so much grief around me. And I'll be really honest, like when I first was in the coming out process, like a lot of people, and by the way, I really love your point. If you look up, there are actually 6 milestones of LGBTQ development. And whether you are 18 or 58, we follow those developments of those milestones of identity development. It is very, very, there's actually a couple of very smart people that have written these, and I have used those for myself and with my clients. And the thing is that I saw all these people around me grieving,
mm,
really grieving intensely the loss of what was about to happen. And I was grieving, and I was a professionally trained grief counselor. And it wasn't until about 6 months into my own process that I said, holy, I'm grieving. That's why I'm
ah,
such a aha, another aha moment. Thank you, Oprah. And I started to be like, oh my gosh, I'm grieving. That is what is happening to me.
yeah.
And so after about another year, I started to think, you know what? People need mutual support groups. And so I started to do mutual support groups for women. And because I had done them in the grieving community for years, I had been a small group facilitator for 20 years before I started doing this. And so I
Mm,
started a mutual support group. And as time went on, I realized it was so much more than grief. People were, especially the women I worked with, they were dealing with guilt and shame about what it was to be a mother, what it meant to be someone who was divorcing, those who had been in a really religious situation. All of a sudden, they have lost their community.
Mm.
They were told that they were an abomination. They were told that we're sinful. I mean, and so unpacking all that. And I learned too, you can't just say to the Christian people, oh, Jesus loves you and it'll be all better. There are some deep, deep religious imprinting on people. And also too, I realized that, you know, there were so many, the internalized homophobia was really rampant. What I did
Mm.
notice, what I would like to say is a lot of times people in the later in life community are the biggest allies in the world, but they also realize what happens is that what in my definition of internalized homophobia is, I don't care if anybody's gay. I will support the gay community. I will be an ally. I will go to parades. The only person who can't be gay is me.
Mm.
And so I do a lot of work with people and unpacking all of that stuff.
Mm.
That even people who think they're amazing allies often struggle with internalized home. And the funny thing is, when I came out, I thought everybody who had come out before me had done all that work, and they hadn't, because we need to do that work to be successful in business, and we need to start owning our own internalized homophobia and showing up fully as ourselves. And so it's a horrible word. We probably could use heteronormativity, or I can't remember the other one right now, but heteronormativity or something like that, that expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like an onion, right? Like we work and then it's like, oh, here's some more I just found, like
Absolutely.
I couldn't relate more with this topic right now. Like I do therapy once a week, and I'm so grateful to my support team for my mental health. And we're doing some work. And just last session, we were like, she called it for me. She's like, maybe this is a little bit a part of your own internalized homophobia here. I was like, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And for me, that feeling, like you said, of core shame is a
Mhm.
lot of my work. Like and like we said, like it doesn't matter where you are in your life. I've had healthy relationships, I've had unhealthy relationships, and there still is, for me, even though like at an early age it was still there, there's still this from my story. And maybe you've had people that have said something similar, where it's like, oh, I'm bad and wrong. Let's, like this, like you said, this heteronormativity, right? That we have this standard, this weird, non-existent thing that we are like crammed down our
Right.
psyche
It's
at an
called,
early
yeah.
age, that we should be a certain way that we're not.
Yeah, and that's social conditioning, right?
Yeah.
That's how we've been conditioned to be. And and as you become more accepting of who you are, we
Mm.
are able to stand back and say, this is ridiculous. Like so for somebody so for example, I feel like the later in life community have so many gifts to give the queer community, because we
Mm.
understand what it looks like to live as a straight person.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, so my wife, who's been out since she's 18, she doesn't see the little microaggressions all the time,
Uh-huh.
because she just has lived her life that way, and she's lived in the South her whole time. On the other hand, I see the microaggressions, and so sometimes I don't know if it's because we're gay or if we're because we're two older women. So I don't know if it's queerness or ageism, but it's
And it could be
something.
both.
Yeah, it could be both.
Yeah. Double whammy. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Well, I just, I feel like I could talk to you all day. So let me go to some of our questions here.
Okay.
So, yeah, well, I love this question that we have here. Is just like, so we've talked about some of the trials, tribulations, some of the work that you do, which I want to hear more about with your company. But for you personally, Anne Marie, and like you said, like y'all folks later in life coming outers have a lot to offer. What can you say is like one of the best things about being out now that you can offer to maybe someone that isn't, or is in the process of deciding?
Well, I have my own name tag on. So, authenticity has become a bit of a buzzword in our culture,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
the best thing is being able to embrace who I was created to be. Absolutely.
Mm,
It has made me
mm,
more confident in myself. I have also like done the hardest thing that I've ever done, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but coming out is up there. And I hope I don't have to do anything like that again in a long time.
mhm.
But the thing is that it made me more confident of who I am and what I have to offer. I don't have to censor any of my feelings anymore, as you know, especially when I'm within community. Like I can be a body lesbian when I want to be, you know. And as a woman that was in a heteronormative marriage, my career always came second to my ex-husband's, no
Mm,
matter what I did. So, for example, I became a chaplain because I knew that my career was going to be second, and I just accepted that, which is absolute. Like now, I like go like I would never do that. Another thing too is I have an emotional intimacy with my wife that I didn't have with my ex-husband, and I end up. It's so funny when I began this coming out process, and part of my story. Um, I said to someone, I need a soft place to land because the work I do is
mm.
so difficult. And honestly, like I didn't expect to come out, but like 3 weeks later, I did come out. But what I needed is that I needed a place to go home to, that someone was taking care of me and I wasn't taking care of everybody else. Because
Yeah,
when you're the mother of 4 kids, that's what you do.
yeah.
And also too that as I've built this business, I have somebody behind me and other people too, wholeheartedly and believing in me. And what is really nice is that our careers are equal. Although I'm the majority breadwinner in our relationship, no one's career is second. So if like she got this incredible opportunity to go somewhere because I work at home, I would go. You know, so nobody's career is second. We're equal, which is wonderful. I always joke, having a wife is the best thing I've ever done in my life. Everyone should have one.
Oh, I love that. So, it's a surprising journey with unexpected turns. Like you said, you became a minister because you were taking back seat to your husband's career, and yet then it became a foundation for you as well.
Absolutely,
You couldn't have
yes.
planned that being part of your coming out experience. Like there's no way we could know that, right?
Right. And also, too, it honestly, one of the questions you asked at the end was, you know, about my professional life. So, being a minister and being a lesbian minister in Christian ministry, luckily I was in a progressive church. And I was a chaplain, which is a really because I'm sort of on the edges of the church. So, like, I think if I was a pastor of a church, it would have been a lot more difficult. But my coming out within my faith community was literally a blip. Nobody cared.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't happen to 99% of the people that come out from a religious tradition. Nobody cared. It was the nicest. It was one. And my church was very accepting. I also
Were
had been a
you with
pastor
United
of
Church
that
at this point?
church.
Is this a different church?
Pardon?
Were you with the United Church at this point, or is this a different church?
No, I was with the United Church of Christ then.
Yeah.
I was
Okay,
ordained with them. And
great.
so it was just wonderful. So I was very
Wow.
lucky with that. But okay, so I'm coming down to the South, right? And being a Christian minister, an out LGBTQ person here in the South, I was a little afraid. And then I just knew like a lot of people that come out later in life often change careers because it just doesn't fit them anymore. And I knew before I came down here, I was tired of being a chaplain. So I was a chaplain down here for about a year, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that's when I started my business. So ironically, I actually interned. I was an intern pastor at a church here in Nashville, and they were the most accepting, loving LGBT. Like and they wanted me to be their pastor, and I actually turned them down because
Wow.
what I realized is that although I still believe in a power greater than myself, an ultimate concern, a higher power, I my faith doesn't fit within the confines of a religious institution anymore. And
Mm,
so I can't ethically lead people when I don't believe that myself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a lot of sense. It's this continue evolution that I feel like is a theme of what we're talking about here, of
Right.
ourselves and our self-discovery. And, it makes me think of like self-care, like you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help someone
Absolutely.
else, right? So you're finding and continuing to find the ways that you're helping, what's helping you on your journey. And then starting your company is how you can authentically, use the buzzword, authentically help other people, right?
Right. Right.
Can you talk about maybe what, in these last couple minutes, you could talk about some of like what was really challenging about starting your company and like how you built your team?
Well, what's challenging is that people have to be at a certain level before they seek my help. They
Right.
have to be at the point where they say that this is so painful that I need to. And so that's why when I start working with people, I start with maybe you're not straight. that's like, and that people can do that.
Yeah.
But when you're with dealing with all those layers, it is very hard to like start to peel that onion. And what ended up happening is that I had to really go a lot on social media and be visible and talk about it and talk about my own coming out and talk about like how happy I am. And in my little world, my wife and I are sort of well known. And because, but also too, what also happened is that I had to surround myself with good people. And what I like to say to the entrepreneurs there is hire for where you want to go, not for where you are. And so one of my requirements is for people to work for me is that they have to be LGBTQ, just because I need people that understand this experience. So my SEO person and my website designer is a former Mormon. She came out at like 22, but she's amazing, and she has helped me grow as a business owner. She made me think about things that I like, branding, all kinds of stuff that I never thought about. And so for her, having her was wonderful. And then also too, my VA is somebody that came out later in life, and it's so funny because she knows this experience so well that she can social media post with very little oversight, and that is wonderful. And
Oh,
and
what
one more thing,
yeah.
and what Anna and that's my SEO person, a website designer, and I had this is my second website. Anna and I realized that like 50% of everybody visiting my website are men. And so now I'm going to be adding, I now say people, I don't say women. And I'm going to start working with men, but I'm going to hire a man to do that because I don't know gay male culture except for a couple of little bit things I know. Mm-hmm.
Well, delegation is I think an act
Yeah.
of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Reverend Anne-Marie, thank you so much for this conversation. Like I said, we had like a list of questions, more with great questions coming in from the audience too. Thank you for making the time today. I wish we could chat. I hope you come back to Power to Fly. It's just, you have so much to offer. And how can people stay connected with you? LinkedIn, your website, social media?
Everything. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I Twitter a little bit. And I'm also on Instagram, Anne-Marie Zanzal, Anne-Marie Zanzal Coaching, AnneMarieZanzal.com. That's how they can find me.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, and have a wonderful rest of your Pride Month.
Thank you. You too.